Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Common Book Show. I am Paula, and we are here with Greg Sterlace, who is sticking his head in my screen right now, and then Richard, and Gloria, and Brian, and my son Tom on drums. So we are here today, and I am not so much prepared because I thought I had some words, but I don't. And so I am going to take this opportunity to jump right to Richard for something on his list.
Okay. What is the capital of Ukraine?
Is it Kiev?
And what do you say?
I don't know.
I just guessed.
How about you, Greg?
I have no idea.
You
would say
can tell. Yeah, Brian. What about you? What's the capital of Ukraine?
Yeah, I was going to say Kiev, however you say it, Kiev.
Okay, that's interesting the way you phrased your answer, because if you are from Russia, you say the capital of Ukraine is Kiev. For some
Okay.
reason, Russians like the Y sound, like Yevgeny Yevtushenko. They like that Y getting into the second syllable.
Yeah.
But if you're Ukrainian, you don't like to speak like a Russian. So you say it's Kiev. You don't put that Y in front of the EV.
Kiev.
Kiev, if you're Ukrainian. But if you're an American, you like to really simplify things down. So you just say Kiev.
Well, that's how I hear it pronounced on the news shows. That's how, like on CNN or MSNBC, that's how they pronounce it. So I always pronounced it Kiev, because that's how the dish, chicken Kiev, that's how I always pronounced it, which is a chicken with, I think it's got ham and cheese rolled up in it. Are you familiar with that
Yeah, I
dish,
think so.
Brian? And it's like a rolled piece of chicken, and it's something I've made in the past, So that's how I always pronounced it then, but that was when I was left to my own devices. Kiev.
So you pronounce it like a Russian.
Kiev. But I must have heard that pronounced someplace too, because I am one, when I look at a word, I'm not going to pronounce it right unless it's really cut and dry. I have a hard time sounding things out, so I must have heard someone say it that way.
Back in the 60s and 70s, that's how I always heard it said in America.
Kiev?
Kiev.
Yeah. Well, that's how
Yeah.
I heard it said. I used to watch cooking shows even back then. There was only a couple of them. There was, the Galloping Gourmet.
Yeah, I liked him.
And
He used to get drunk drinking a bunch of wine, cooking. I liked he was funny.
yeah, and then there was the other woman. What was the woman's name, Greg?
Julia Child.
Julia Child. She was on. I got my first dose of self-esteem from cooking. I figured that when I was a teenager, I better learn how to cook, because I thought I didn't think I had a bad sense of self-esteem. So I learned how to cook to get positive reinforcement. And it was nice to get that, and people liked the way I cooked, except when I tried to make your brother a cake and I substituted baking soda for baking powder, and I made Play-Doh.
That's an easy mistake to make, though.
No, it wasn't a mistake. I just couldn't find the baking powder, and I was 15, so I thought I'll just use baking soda. It must be the same thing. And I put it in, and I now have the recipe for Play-Doh. It was heart-shaped pink Play-Doh. You could mold it into anything. Well, that was a mistake, but you learn. You cook and learn. Yeah. So does this say anything about? Is it because we are Americans and we want the easiest method of doing everything?
That's an interesting.
Question.
Yeah, it's an interesting hypothesis.
Yeah.
Like, do Americans like to take shortcuts?
Yes.
They do,
Especially in this day and age. where
Kind of,
everything-
yeah.
well,
Internet, instant gratification. There's no,
Yeah, it's
Fast,
just
fast.
Everything. I know. Even movies. You've noticed this in movies. Is those fast cuts? It's constant. It's like they're expecting the attention span of a butterfly, or a worm. They're constantly cutting and cutting and cutting, and it's really annoying after a while. They don't expect you to be able to sit and watch a elongated scene like there used to be in movies.
That kind of started with MTV videos back in the 80s. That's what a lot of film critics I've read say, that the directors that used to direct the MTV videos started getting into cinema. And then they used to start using that same technique in cinema. And then people got like in action films primarily.
Yeah, a lot of action. But did
And
Richard?
that bothers me a lot too when they do that.
Did you see that Everything Everywhere All at Once? That movie.
No, I've been wanting to see it.
I tried watching it, but I don't like movies with kung fu.
I didn't like. We couldn't watch it. It was enervating.
Like what bothered you? The pace?
The constant changing from
Oh, like it's jumping
Time
from
period.
universe to universe?
jumping. Yeah, just the jumping and it didn't make sense to me. Did it make sense to you?
No.
All right. I mean, it really didn't make any sense. I got tired of
I might not like that
waiting
either, yeah.
for it to make sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, but that one Korean movie, I love that movie. The one was it last year or 2 years ago?
Parasite.
Parasite. That was great.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot
Diane
of
Jolie
long
said
tracking
John Wick
shots.
has got a lot of long tracking shots. John
You know
Wick
what's a
4.
good Korean movie? I think
Yeah,
it's Korean, is Train to Busan.
So, the John Wick movies, those I'm not really into, Diane. I saw. Did we see a whole one, or did we just see parts of it?
I've seen 3. You saw part of 3.
Okay, I just
Saw
saw.
part
Three
of
was
number,
the
number
best.
3.
Yeah, I just saw parts of it, and it doesn't interest me. This too violent,
He
but
just basically shoots people.
yeah.
It's
But
how many people they can kill in an hour and a half.
but
yeah.
I like long scenes like that. I don't know. Maybe I should just check it out. But I don't know. It's too much violence. But I don't recommend that film, that Everything Everywhere, that one. I don't recommend it. But Parasite was great. I've never seen a film that changed genres 3 times during the film, and it worked.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
What's the name of that director?
The name, I don't remember his name. Do you remember, Greg?
They got the Oscar, right?
The Korean director?
For what? Parasite?
Yeah.
Bong Joon-ho.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
very good, Greg. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. But that one I would definitely recommend. I thought that was great. But
I'll have to see it. It sounds.
it's crazy though. It's just that you think you're watching one kind of movie, and then like a third of the way through it changes into another kind of movie, and then the last part is another kind of movie, but it all works together. It kind of builds. I thought it worked great.
Peter J. said you should see Decision to Leave. It's a Korean movie.
Oh yeah?
That's what he says on the screen.
Yeah.
Decision to Leave. I never heard of it. We all have to check that out.
Yeah, Peter Joe said everything was tiresome. Yeah, I agree. I was very tiresome.
It did win Best Picture.
I don't care. I don't care. They might have had a reason for doing that. Maybe they owed him something. You know? Just because they said it's, I don't know. What about that movie? We watched that. Okay, I really could use a memory. The one with the woman that was cooking and having sex with
Oh, Gene Dealman.
Gene Dealman. We watched that.
Yeah, what'd you think of that?
I thought it was horrifyingly bad.
I thought it was dreary and tiresome. I was.
Is that a real person or fictional?
It's a
Fictional.
fictional person. She's a housewife.
I haven't heard of it yet.
Oh well,
Sight and
it's
Sound said it was the
it's
best movie
old.
of all time.
Yeah, Greg has Sight and Sound as his Bible, right? So he's got the new Sight and Sound 100 best movies of all time, and it was #1. And he hadn't seen it, and I
Really?
hadn't seen it, so we watched it, and it was like a slice of life. This woman's really dreary
You know,
life.
Stuff like her taking a bath, and then her taking a bath again, and then her going to the grocery store, and then going to the grocery store again, and then making food on the stove again, and making food on the stove again, and then feeding her brother some meal while they didn't talk to each other. But over 3 hours of it though, and we watched 1 hour of it, and then we fast forwarded to the last 2 hours, and it was the exact same thing. It was just 3 days in a row. And there was the exact same thing. She's a prostitute, so she would.
But her husband doesn't know about it.
No, she
no,
doesn't-
not her husband. It's her
brother.
brother. We didn't know it was her brother at
just-
first.
She has sex with three.
She has
different-
regular customers.
Yeah, regular that come.
But they don't even
every
show the
week.
sex with two of the Johns. They just show them going in a room, and then they come out eventually. And then the one that they show sex, she's just like bored, and she's laying underneath the guy, and he's fucking her, and that was it. That was the whole movie. It was just 3 days that were exactly the same: shopping, bathing, cooking, and sitting with her brother, and fucking. But she only showed once the fucking.
But so
And it was just
Why,
that was
does
it
she,
for
why, does
3
she, why does she kill the guy at the end?
Because she was sick of being fucked by the guy who fucked her.
we didn't even watch the end,
Well,
did we?
that's okay, 'cause I hate
fast-forwarded
sex
through
scenes.
it.
Yeah, we watched.
I
like,
hate
fast
sex
forwarding
scenes in
through it.
movies anyway. It's good they only showed the one.
Yeah. Well,
She killed
Yeah.
him because she was sick of being. I'm assuming because she was sick of him laying on top of her.
I
fucking
can't.
her
I
because
can't.
She seemed dismayed by it, and then
I-
she killed him.
I can't successfully speak
Oh,
to
you
that.
just ruined the
Richard,
movie.
because we watched it in like double speed
No, well, yeah, double speed, yeah.
because we just
3
wanted
hours
to see
long.
if anything was going to happen.
Well, it was the same thing.
Right. Is it
And
going to
so
be
I
like
didn't-
this the whole
I
movie?
didn't get to that point where. Do you have an idea of why she killed the guy?
Well, that is what the critics, why they think it's such a great movie, is because
Or
you
they
can
have to get through-
speculate
Yeah.
if you lead an ordinary, normal, boring life, are there things under the surface that are going to emerge?
Well, yeah, it's just like if you lead
Well,
an
but she's- I mean-
so-called exciting life, things underneath the surface are going to emerge.
Right. The thing
Things
about
always
her,
emerge from
though,
underneath the surface.
being a prostitute
Yes.
is
Exactly,
is
Brian.
far from an ordinary life. So, but the thing is, she was so she was like so cold that it was like a transaction for her. Like Greg said, in the one scene, they do show the sex. She's just laying there and just waiting for it to be over. You know, it was transactional.
Now, one theory that
But
I
with
heard,
most prostitutes, that's how it is, though. I mean, that's at least what I hear is that really underneath, that's what the reality is.
Right, but they're not acting like that. I mean, she was just
No.
basically laying there. She wasn't
Right.
putting on any show at all. I mean, I don't
Right.
know. I've never been to a
Right.
prostitute. I can't.
Yeah.
I can't speak to this intelligently, but I imagine from what I've seen in movies and from what I would want if I were a man going to a prostitute, that there should be a little excitement and action.
Oh, yeah, they're supposed to act, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, so Peter must have seen the book too. Yeah, Peter, I got the magazine for Greg as one of his birthday gifts. So, because we couldn't find it, I had to order it from England.
now one analysis of the film that I heard is that if you carefully study the scene before she murders the guy,
Yeah.
and you look at her face in the scene,
Mm-hmm.
she's about to have an orgasm.
Oh.
So
Cool.
something has flipped in her
Awesome.
mind.
And she can't have that. That's the guy she kills?
Yeah.
I agree with that 100%. She was so detached and she was so in control of her life that if she had an orgasm, it would ruin everything.
And another point to support that theory is after she kills the guy, she goes into the kitchen. Now I think she has a kid who comes home, right?
Yeah.
And he looks at his
It's her
mother
kid.
and he sees.
Yeah, it's her kid. It's not the brother. It's a kid. Her kid.
I thought it was her brother.
Yeah, I think it's her kid.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the kid says, "Oh, you're not fixing supper. Like
Yeah.
you've lost your routine.
Yeah.
See, you lost
And
the,
the dead guy.
predictability. You lost the
the
control.
dead guy was in the bedroom still.
He was dead.
So they don't show what happens though. They just end it there.
We'd have to ask somebody who has actually carefully studied the movie more than me. Like Greg, I like to watch analyses of movies,
Uh-huh.
sometimes more than the movies.
Yeah.
Like that new movie Burning. Well, it's not new. It's a couple of years old.
Yeah.
Boy, there's a ton of analyses about what Burning is about. Absolutely. I mean, it's mind-boggling.
Huh.
And I've watched so many of these critiques. I'm sort of like, I don't really know if I want to watch this movie.
Yeah, I get that. I am one who likes to come to my own conclusions, but I do like this idea now because, like I said, we watched. It was so slow and dragging, and we weren't enjoying it that we just watched it on fast forward, and we missed
It
that.
still sucked.
Yeah, it still sucked.
Good.
but
And
So would you say the routine of her life is boring?
the routine of her life is she's controlling.
I don't
it.
think it's boring. I think it's boring as a viewer to watch paint dry for over 3 hours. I mean, it's not.
Yeah.
I don't think it's boring to her. The character doesn't. I don't think
To
she's
them.
necessarily having a boring time, because she might be in a. You can't tell a person is what they're thinking. They might be thinking very interesting thoughts. If they don't feel bored, they're not bored. If the person doesn't feel bored, they're not bored. But I mean, I was bored by watching her just living the most mundane thing for 3 hours. It just it went
So
nowhere.
you don't find any value in the mundane in movies.
I don't find any value in the mundane in movies if it bores me.
Well,
if I get a chance to think about it, I bet you there's mundane
that
stuff
one
that
drive,
happens.
that one movie where those guys are taking a drive.
Yeah, that's
that movie,
mundane.
You love that movie,
Exactly, that's a good point. Jerry.
Jerry.
Yeah.
Is what it's called?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he
That's,
loves
that's
that movie.
mundane. I love that movie.
How do you feel about the mundane in movies, Gloria? Do you tune out?
Yeah. And it reminds me of a trend. It's a different genre. During the Super Bowl, back a couple of years, I don't remember who the performer is right now, but I want to see a spectacle. I want to see dazzle me, you know. And they were wearing plaid. I know it's the style, the younger generation, blah blah blah. The rag, well, it looked like rags, and it looked like I could find better stuff at the Goodwill. But
And we
I
often
was
do.
disappointed because I want to see razzle dazzle, you know, not mundane or ordinary. And I was very disappointed to see, you know, like lots of plaids and rags, and so it's a different genre, but it's kind of the same.
Well, I think
I
you
want to be
brought-
entertained.
brought up a new thing because I think it's our expectations
Yes.
of what we want when we're in our entertainment. So, if in the expectation part, you know, you're looking for fantasy. And I mean I like really good dialogue, and I like to learn something. I like something, you know, just to hit me and say, go, oh, that's amazing, you know, or someone to do something that impresses me. I don't know, but I like depth, but I want something, you know. I don't want to watch a routine that without the prostitution part I could watch myself do every day, you know, making a meal, washing dishes. That's the tedium of life that everybody has to. I mean, and okay, if you're if you're in the right frame of mind, that tedium is not unpleasant.
Could be therapeutic.
Therapeutic,
Washing
yeah.
dishes, cleaning house. I like doing that stuff because, you know, I get something accomplished, done. And
It's mindless.
yeah, you know. And
And you could look at it and it's done, and you feel accomplished.
But that's different than watching a movie of 3
Right.
hours with a woman doing
I
it in a
agree.
movie.
Agree with you, Greg.
with no interesting dialogue. It's just like
Yeah,
most
that
times there was no hardly any talking in that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
no, I would find that very boring too.
It was hard-
Waste of time.
Yeah, and then when they do speak, it's things like, I received a letter in the mail. Let me read it to you. Dear Gene, we're having a good time here in Canada. It's very good and interesting.
Eh,
Yeah.
Love the cousins.
Well,
Yeah.
you did see a couple movies off that list though that you did like.
Oh yeah, I
recently.
saw. I was surprised. I saw 2 in a row. I saw Do the Right Thing for the first time finally, and I
Oh.
saw
really? The old one?
Yeah.
from
Do the Right-
'89. Yeah.
Oh,
I never
that's
saw
a
it
great
before.
movie. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really good. And something else the night before. Oh, Chloe from 5 to 7. That was dynamite. Agnes Varda. That was fucking dynamite. I couldn't believe how good it was. So
I
that
didn't
I
see
didn't
it.
see it.
I
I,
didn't
I
see it
was
either.
asleep.
so it takes place in Paris in '62, and it's like you're in Paris in '62 because shoots as a documentary, but it's a story. So there's a story with interesting characters and dialogues, but she shoots it like a documentary of Paris in '62, in the summer of '62, or summer, but it came out in '62. It's really good. So that was like after watching all those boring movies on the list, where I was turning off and falling asleep at. You know, that was nice to see two that were good.
Yeah.
Now, what about Diane and Peter? Do you like tedium in movies? Can you get into the life of the character on the screen who doesn't do anything extraordinary?
Well, Diane's saying for the viewer it's tedium, so maybe that's her. For the viewer, it's tedium.
Depends. The key word there is tedium.
Yeah,
Is tedium a bad thing or a good thing?
Tedium is a bad thing if you're watching a so-called entertainment.
Yeah,
film.
you're
For
all-
Diane.
Want to be entertained.
Oh.
Diane. It might be a good thing.
No, I'm just saying. I'm saying from my point of view, the tedium is a bad thing if you're watching a so-called entertainment movie.
Yeah.
Like the top 100 list is so-called entertainment movies. It includes in the top 10 Citizen Kane, Vertigo, and The Godfather, for instance. And then Gene Dealman's ahead of The Godfather, Vertigo, and Citizen Kane. And, and we're talking about entertainment movies, and you get this movie that's nothing's happening on purpose. And so I think that tedium is bad for so-called entertainment movies. If you want to, if you're not into entertainment, then hey, tedium's fine.
So
Although Sight and Sound asked, what is the best movie, not the most entertaining?
Yeah, but I'm saying the list of 100.
In fact, I had a discussion with somebody about this, about the Cannes Film Festival
That's what I
every
was
year.
just thinking about.
And it's coming up. It's coming up in May, the Cannes Film Festival. They specifically tell the jury, your job is to select the best movie, not the most entertaining movie, because Cannes has a long history of picking the best movie. You ever hear of the seventh art?
no.
The French came up with it. They said, oh, look, there's this new thing coming out, moving pictures, right?
Yeah.
And it's entertainment. But then as time went on, the French were the ones who noticed, hey, maybe this is an actual art form. Maybe this is not just entertainment. Let's have a festival that looks at film as art. And and so that's why often what the Cannes Film Festival says is the best movie. Other people, like Americans, will say, I thought Triangle of Sadness was crap.
Yeah.
Yet it was the best movie
Right.
last year.
And I can see the point in having some movies that are pure art. And I think that when I was saying that I like the dialogue and those are the kinds of movies, the deep movies that are interesting to me and are also art, And also, there's some movies that are stunningly beautiful, but they have, their dialogue might not hold up to that same level. So that I can't think of any off the top of my head, but I do remember seeing some movies that made me go, I know, it's just
Beautiful.
dazzling, beautiful.
Well, that ties into what Peter Joe just said. Tarkovsky, he
Yeah.
made this movie in the 70s, I think, called Stalker. And it's a real slow movie. But it's beautiful to see. Because Tarkovsky's father was a famous poet. So now the son is going to make movies.
Like poetry.
Yeah,
Yes.
Visual poetry.
Yeah.
Visual, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, visual poetry.
Yeah. And I want to ask Peter something since he's right here with us. Peter, okay, I want you to explain what you meant when you said prostitutes were trying to give you credit. I don't know if you meant credit as far as like they wanted you to use your credit card, or they wanted to
coupons?
make you feel like you had done such a
Sounds-
great job that
Sounds so very personal.
I'm curious about that though. You did share it with us. All right, you can answer or not, Peter. You're off the hook.
Well, I think that the Jimmy Dealman thing it's allegedly art rather than entertainment cinema. It's art cinema. It's still art cinema means the viewer can subjectively say, I don't like this art. I think it sucks. And therefore, I think it's art cinema and it's not entertainment cinema. Okay, that's fine. But I think as art, it's really horrible art, drab and mundane and going nowhere for 3 hours. And it could have been cut down to 40 minutes rather than 3
Right,
hours
although-
and 10 minutes because, you're showing 3 days that are very boring and then she kills him. That's it. That's the whole fucking movie. And if that's art, then it's art, fine. But I think it's horrible art.
Well, and the
And it
case.
should be number one of all fucking time for art cinema.
Well, I sat there with you and I watched what we watched, and
Yeah.
and the only thing that really does strike my interest is that last scene. But of course, you'd have to make a build up to show her control and her lifestyle in order to make that point. But I don't think it had to be 3 hours worth, and I
it's
agree
not
with
much
Greg
of a
on
point
that.
for a
Yeah.
3-hour movie. Like 1 point in 3 hours. Why don't you?
Yeah.
I
So
still think you can make it in 45 minutes. Then I would applaud it more. I would say, well, they really made a point there at the end of 45 minutes.
yeah. So you got a quizzical look on your face, Richard.
For some reason, the text on the screen was mixed up, and it just sorted itself out.
Oh, okay. All right. So now I did start reading. I finished the cookbook at long last, and I started reading a book that my sister, both my sisters read, and they recommended it to me. It's called The Paris Architect, and it's about a man who is not really. I'm only in the first few chapters. He's not really on board with helping the Jews in Paris during the war, but he ends up helping them because he's an architect and somebody asked him to build a hiding space for a person. And so he's getting involved with this. And I like the story and I like the ideas, but I guess I'm really spoiled by good writing, and I'm finding the writing a little didactic. Whoever's wrote the book, if you're looking it up, you can see who the writer. I think it's a woman. Is it a woman?
Charles.
Oh, Charles. No. Okay.
Belfour.
All right. So I think it's a real story about a man who existed, but they're putting in some facts that are. I mean, it shows a lot of research, but they don't seem to fit into the storyline, and also the Tom just either ran outside or somebody. So they don't. The little pieces of information are getting in the way of the story, and then also it's didactic, but I'm going to finish the book because I think it's an interesting premise, and I like the book, but I'm very spoiled by
Good writing.
good writing.
Peter J. answered your question.
Ah,
3 seconds, they were knocking on my door.
Wow, you are a lucky man, Peter.
No wonder he made a porno movie later. It all makes sense now.
Peter, was it purely for physical pleasure, or was there an emotional communication taking place?
Oh, I won't answer that for him. Free, yeah. Oh, free sex. I love that. Yeah, Peter, you're a stitch, as they used to say in the old days. So anyway, that's what I'm reading now. Brian, are you still reading the same book as last week?
No, I'm now reading a book called that I've read twice before, I think, called Neither Wolf Nor Dog. It's a book by Kent Nurburn. It's a guy who he taught on Indian reservations with the Sioux Indians for a long time, and he got to know a lot of people on the reservation, and instead of trying to, become an Indian, like he says in the book, a lot of white people, they want to assimilate they read about the ideas of the mythology of the Indians, and they go and they hang out at powwows and they want to become like the Indians. Like, he writes this book, he gets invited by this real Lakota Sioux elder who's in the last years of his life, but he wants to share all the knowledge that he learned from his grandfather and great-grandfather.
Okay.
And it's seems like the real deal. I've read a lot of different Native American literature and things, and I actually emailed him after I read the book 10 years ago for the first time, and he emailed me back.
Oh, really?
Yes, he did, and he lives way in the woods in northern Minnesota, and really cool guy. And in this book, it's like he he struggles. He struggles from, I know from some of my Seneca friends that I had 20 years ago, 25 years ago. I haven't seen him in a long time. I used to work with a guy who was a full-blooded Seneca, and I used to hang out with him and his cousins. And it just shocked me how their perception of reality is completely different than like when you're growing up as a white person.
Yeah, there's a definite different worldview. I mean, that's for sure.
It's complete. No, there's complete differences. Like they'd be speaking English and I literally couldn't understand what they were talking about. And I'd say, I know you're speaking English, but I can't understand the concepts that you're talking about. And they'd say, well, you didn't grow up on the reservation. You have no idea. You don't have our worldview. You don't understand the world that we perceive.
Yeah.
It's like different.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So he struggled writing the book. He struggled to be authentically himself, knowing that he would never be a Native American, but he tried to be as true to their what they're expressing to him as he could. And
right. And I'll tell you,
but it was a real struggle. It was a real struggle because he almost quit a few times because he felt like they were really hard on him and that they weren't respecting his point, like his perspective in life, like that he felt, and he was very suspicious that they would think that he was trying to always ingratiate himself to them and that the Indians were being critical of him. But,
well, there's going to be a learning curve both ways when there's intercultural. I'll tell you something. I wanted to be West African last night. I would have become West African in a heartbeat. That party was so moving and joyful. And
why don't you just act West African from now on?
Well, you can get caught up though. Like he was saying, you can get caught up if you're in a group of other people, with people with an other mindset. It becomes really seductive, and you feel like, wow, this is really different. It's amazing, and you discount everything you've learned because it seems mundane, and because your life is something you understand, and this is something you don't understand, and it becomes exciting. So I can see where there would have been an issue if you're in a situation like that. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of barriers to me becoming West African.
No, did you think of yourself like Tom Wolfe last night? Like you're, how he went with the Ken Kesey people, and he's with the that Maestro guy. He was with him, and he wrote a book like that about that, and he wrote a book about the astronauts.
Yeah,
I feel like an anthropologist.
No,
like
I didn't feel like I wanted to explain them. I just felt like I wanted to be that joyful. I didn't want to do any explaining. I just wanted to engage in that kind of.
So you didn't feel like you wanted to write an article about it?
No, I didn't want. I don't want to write an article about it. I want
to feel joyful.
I wanted to partake of what they were feeling, and I was separate from it. So
it made you joyful when you came home. You seemed joyful from it.
It was very exciting, and it was interesting.
At least you got the excitement out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I'm talking about is I have an amazing family of neighbors that moved in about 4 or 5 years ago, and it couldn't be that long because the little boy was already born. So it's probably 3 years ago, and the woman just graduated from medical school, and these neighbors are wonderful, and I love them, and I hope she gets an internship in Buffalo because that's her first choice, and I'd love to keep them as neighbors. But they invited me and Karen to this party, and I expected a graduation party, like a graduation party that you go to, and you give a gift and you talk to people for a few minutes and you mull around. But instead, it was West African pop music all the time. People were dancing like crazy. They danced until 10 o'clock, which is when we ate. And then they danced some more. Oh. They introduced when you introduce the families of the bride and groom at a wedding, you would say these are Joe's parents, and Joe's parents come out in a long procession, and they play a song usually, and people applaud. The families were competing with dancing.
Oh, what do they call?
They were just competing. They were walking down this runway and competing, and then getting up to the dance floor and sweating their brains out and dancing and just jubilant. And then the two families were dancing together, and I was like, wow, this, it's better than a Polish wedding. It was great.
Polish weddings are pretty cool, yeah.
Yeah, it was better. It was better. So
Well,
I was
yeah, way different than Caucasian American white people
well, I
weddings
felt
and stuff.
I felt really good.
But-
I felt really happy that they invited me because, I'm not their family.
Yeah, it's
I'm,
cool.
and they did. She invited a couple other people who were students that graduated with her. But
Did she graduate from UB Medical?
yes,
Well, that's actually a really great medical school. My ex-wife couldn't get into the UB Medical School. She had to go to Iowa, where I moved to, so she could go to medical school there.
yeah. No, it's a great school, and she's really smart, and the family's really nice, and I hope I don't have to lose them and get
Yeah.
used to some new people. I don't want to get used to new people. Anyway, that was my story. But do you have anything you want to talk about, or are you?
I'm still trying to think of the name of the dance where it from the 50s where people line up in two.
Conga?
No,
Oh.
well, two lines, and they go through the middle dancing. And they even did it on what was that African American dance show from the 60s?
Soul Train.
Soul Train.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they did it there too, but I forget the name of the dance.
Yeah.
That sounds like what
But
your
they were,
families were doing.
they were all dancing. There was nobody standing on the sides. Everybody was just dancing
moving and-
their brains out. And the women had on the tightest clothes, and they had their very zaftig bodies, and they were like into it. They just wanted to move all their parts at the same time, and everything was very bright and flaming, and it was a circus of sensations. It was amazing. And here I was in my very modest long.
Looked like you were at a funeral
I
compared
looked
to that.
Right. Yeah. So anyway, that was my yesterday, which was really fun. But so Richard, what's on your we only got to one thing on your list, and then we went off on tangents.
Yep.
I had a long discussion with a mystery guest
Uh-huh.
about something that scientists have noted over the past few decades,
Mm-hmm.
that the amount of testosterone levels in men
Oh yeah.
has been going down 1% every year.
Yeah, it's really drastically gone down.
So the question is, what's your hypothesis why this is so?
There's a lot of evidence. It's chemicals in the environment, pesticides and hormones flushed into our water.
And the food and things, additives in our food. I mentioned this before, but in Europe, they have
No, it's not food additives. It's actually every time a woman flushes, not blaming women, but every time a woman flushes pills, like birth control pills, they go right into our water and they stay there.
Yeah,
And it's actually affecting hormones in human bodies.
there's a
and
lot
stuff
of
like
there's
that.
yes they have there's a lot of evidence that there's a if they test water, that's the water that's going to become drinking water. There's a lot of medications in the water that people do flush instead of taking it back to the drugstore like you're supposed to, or throwing it away. And even then it can get into the groundwater. So you're really supposed to take medication back. But but I also think because in Europe they have outlawed so many of the food additives that we have in the United States because they found them to be harmful. And I don't know. Do you know if the
That's
if
true,
the
but
sperm-
European levels of sperm counts are decreasing the same as men
Really?
in America.
Really?
Yes,
You
I
know-
just read it last year, the year
Stroll.
before.
He said the name of this dance song.
Straw? Oh,
I'm
the
sorry.
straw.
I'm so
Thank you.
sorry.
The what?
Thank you, Peter. Anytime you want to come here, Peter, and hang out with us, you are welcome. You've got so much important information.
I'm
The
sorry
straw.
I interrupted you.
So
Yeah.
it's the same
Chemicals and-
across the world. Is that what is
Well,
that,
in Europe and the U.S., sperm counts are definitely dropping in men drastically. And in fact, they say men now only have 50% of the number of sperm that men had, say, 50 years ago, which
Yeah.
is incredibly drastic.
Did,
So what we were discussing, see, the mystery guest said it's the mind affecting the body.
I don't buy that.
Whereas what you just said and what Brian just said is that it's something physical in the environment affecting the body.
is that what they postulated in the article?
Oh, well, the article states what's happening, and then people make hypotheses as to what the causes are.
Yeah.
So this thing about the mind affecting the body goes like this. With the rise of feminism, it should have also lifted up men, but it didn't. So as we know from our discussions with James Walker,
Yeah.
you find a resentment in some men that they're not valued. So the mind is affecting the body. You know, I'm not valued, I'm not worth, anything of substance, and your body corresponds.
Well, okay. So men have
Your mind definitely can
Men
affect your
have
body,
been-
but not that directly, I don't
men
think.
have been up here for so long, and now there has been, we've had a paradigm shift with women coming up faster than men because men were up there already. I don't feel sorry for men at this point. There's a Eleanor Roosevelt quote that I use all the time. No one can make you feel inferior without your permission. If these men are feeling inferior because the women are not subservient anymore and kowtowing to their pleasure and their demands, then that's their problem. They have to learn to get over that. Because women who are human beings, who have not been treated as human beings since the beginning of time, just about, women are human beings, and if women are rising, it should cause the men to be proud of their women and not say, oh, if she's up here, then she wants me up here. That's not true. We are ready to, it's still here. The men are still here and women are still here. Women don't want men who exceed them. They want partners. They want people who are equal to them, and we still don't have that. It's not going to be like that if we survive as a human race, a couple hundred years. So the idea that men feel bad because women are getting more power and more prestige in the world, if they feel like that, that's because it's their perception. They should concentrate on what they're doing and be proud of the women that they associate with who are able to create a world for themselves or a spot in the world for themselves. There's no, we're not taking over men. We're not becoming the men. We're just having our own, we're finally not even catching up. We're finally able to rise a little bit, and now look what they're doing. They're trying to take away all this stuff so that we become, we become machines again.
Well, it's like Handmaid's Tale.
It's like Handmaid's Tale is so prophetic, scary.
Atwood knew she was prophetic with the whole
Yeah.
the whole American. Let's get rid of Roe versus Wade if we can. Let's keep the women down. Us white male Republicans and for instance, it was really something.
I'm looking. Yes, chemicals. Says Peter.
Well, there's a lot of links now between chemicals and creating autism, like pesticides. There were some very authoritative studies in the last few years that pesticides in our food, which are everywhere unless you eat purely organic, they're in everything you eat.
Yeah.
They've tested all the foods in supermarkets in America. They're loaded with pesticides, and they think it causes ADHD, and autism.
Well, that's
now.
something I
There's
would
a
be
strong
curious
link.
about. I'd be curious to know if those levels are the same in Europe, because I know in Europe they've got
Probably
much
not,
stricter. They have much stricter. When you go to a meat market in Paris, the meat is in the thing, and there's a name of
Yeah.
a farm that's by the meat. This comes from this
Right.
farm, and on this date, and this is, you know, the location of the farm. Same thing. Every piece of poultry, everything that's in there, they know where it comes from, and they are not allowed to.
Well, they don't have the
Oh, and
giant
milk.
factory farms that we do.
When I was in Paris with my sisters in 2006 or 7, I think it was 7, I was able to drink milk, which I couldn't drink here because the milk it made me it gave me like phlegm, and I was having an allergic reaction to it. And it turns out it wasn't the milk I was allergic to. So now I buy organic milk, and I can drink milk.
They add hormones to the milk here.
But organic milk, there's no hormones. So I buy organic milk, and I can drink milk. Before I couldn't. I had to switch over to soy milk, and there's not as much protein in soy milk as there is in regular milk. So there's a different standard. I'd like to know if they have as much autism in Europe.
Yeah, that's a good question. I have no idea about that one. But I know one thing, even though we weren't as aware of those issues when in the 50s and 60s, like whatever, when we were in grammar school in the 60s, I really don't remember. There was always kids that were hyper and whatever, but I don't remember like all these problems with ADHD and attention deficit and autism. And I mean, I'm sure autism existed and whatnot, but it seems way worse 50 years later.
It does. It definitely does.
So I think it's environmental, and it's not just the pesticides in food. The chemicals are everywhere in your furniture. There's the chemicals like
The
they
plastic
started in
stuff.
the plastics, but also all of our furnitures and
Carpet.
rugs. They put these fire retardant
Yes.
chemicals in there that are really carcinogenic, and they don't even know what they're doing to us because they off gas. And your air in your house, if scientists come in your house and test your air from your rugs and your curtains and all the shit in your house, the plastics, it's all off-gassing chemicals. And there's more and more and more of that. And I think a lot of people are underestimating. We don't really know what the long-term effects are those. It's hard to study something over 50 years.
Yeah, but there are big changes in people's health and
Right.
and the amount of people who are getting diagnosed with autism. I know. I mean, you can think about the kids if you can remember the kids in your grade school. You can think about the kids where you think, okay, I bet you this kid had ADHD. You know, he was hyper.
Yeah,
really hyper.
there was always hyperactive
There was
kids.
the one kid who couldn't stop fidgeting. That kid, okay, or the kid who had maybe Asperger's, who was really good at math, but he had no social skills. You know, you could probably pick them out, but there were maybe 2. You know, now it's off the charts.
Exactly.
Rampant. I talked with a lady about a month or so ago during a lunch, and I don't remember how we got on the topic, but about the additives in food. And she said her granddaughter at 9 years old started menstruating.
What's the typical age for?
12.
12.
I mean, at
Yeah, that's
9,
documented.
the body is not done growing yet. So even if it's theoretically capable of becoming pregnant, what's the viability? It's just a disaster with these chemicals and all the crap that's changing our hormones.
Hormones in the meat and the milk.
Yeah. but
Chicken
at
is loaded with
9,
hormones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you see more and more now they're advertising, you know, hormone-free chicken and things like that. But I buy, if I do buy poultry, I buy organic. It's very expensive, but I have a feeling that we were talking last week. We were talking about how everything can be the cause. One thing can be the cause of everything that's wrong with you.
Yeah.
We were talking about that.
Yeah.
And I feel that everything that I have that's an an ailment or a complaint
Yeah.
is due to my low tolerance for all these food additives and for added sugar. The spectrum, yeah, the spectrum of autism is much broader. You're right. I mean, we could have picked out one kid in class where I can just think of this kid Jerome. He was very, very smart, but I bet if they were diagnosing people like they are now, he had some form of autism. But
Yeah, Paula, about the food additives, I wasn't disagreeing with you that they have an effect because, for instance, when I was 16, I suddenly developed absolutely severe food allergies. And my doctor in Buffalo, the allergist, said I was one of the worst cases he ever saw. And, I asked him at 16, well, how did I eat all this stuff for 16 years and now
Yeah.
I'm allergic to it? And he said, well, when you figure that out, you can tell the doctors because we don't know. But he told me in my last visit, this was in 1978, and he said that he was certain himself that the food colorings and additives that they had been really pushing into foods in the 60s into the mostly into the 70s was causing a lot of food allergies, but it was almost impossible to prove because it was now in everything. So you can't isolate it.
yeah,
I'm glad you mentioned dye because I was gonna
Yeah.
throw that in there.
Food colors,
Yeah.
food additives.
yeah, yeah. And
You
so,
go back to the 40s and 50s and there wasn't that much of that.
so now
Yes.
I'm on a mission to remove all processed food from our diet, and
Yeah, I don't eat any processed food.
and remove the most of the added sugar, and I hope that when I get my next blood work done, that my A1C is down, which is a indicator of diabetes or pre-diabetes, and my sugar levels are down. It's
Yeah.
it's like I was hoping that I would drop a shit ton of weight. That's not happening. But you know what? If I can get my levels down, if I can improve my health, that's what I'm after. Because it seems like I'm not going to start a diet that's not sustainable, like something where you cut out all carbs and you cut out all I mean there's just I know who I am and I know that I need to eat a variety of foods, and so if it's not sustainable, I can't do it. I'm not going to just go on a diet to lose weight because that doesn't work. I mean, it works, and then it doesn't work.
Yeah, you gain it right back. Yeah.
So I'm trying, but so we are how close are we to our?
6 minutes.
Got 6 minutes. Okay, we got time for another thing.
Topic.
So the mystery guests believe that the mind affects the body.
Yeah.
In this instance,
Yeah.
with the testosterone going down.
Yeah.
And he cited Camille Paglia. Do you know who that is?
No.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Camille Paglia is an academic who is a very good speaker because she's so smart.
Mm-hmm.
But Camille Paglia likes saying very controversial things.
Well, that's how she gets her hits.
And she takes the position what Peter said 2 comments ago. The American empire is destroying itself. She says that if you look at all the empires that have fallen apart, just before they fell apart, men pretended to be like women. And Camille Paglia said, that's what's happening in America now with the transgender movement. There is a desire to be like women. And she said, this is a sign of decadence. I mean, she's something to listen to.
Yeah, I have my own theory about this, which we've talked about.
So, but I
Yeah.
want to finish telling
Yeah.
you what the mystery guest said.
Okay, what I can't.
The mystery guest said, all children go through a period, and this is what Camille Paglia
Yeah.
also said. You go through a period where you say, I don't like society. I don't fit in. None of this makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
So in the 50s, you became a beatnik, and in the 60s, you became a hippie, and in the 70s you became a punk. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
There's always a movement willing to embrace you.
Right.
This is the new movement that is embracing
Oh.
the alienated young people.
Yes,
Uh-huh.
but it's not all people. It's only people who think deeply. You know, there's a lot of people who are happy to just lollygag through life, and you know, people that I went to high school with who never even considered, you know, doing any of the alternate culture things, because they were happy with the culture as it was, because they were accepted in that culture, because they thought like the people that existed in that culture. So, you know, it's only people who think past the ordinary and the mundane who end up looking for something else, you know. And I think that's a very valid point, that maybe this is the new subculture, that because otherwise they're really, can you think of another one?
Well,
But how many men are really trying to become like women? I don't see it. Maybe a small percentage. I think she's overblowing it.
Well, with young people, it's become way, you know, like my granddaughter's 15, the other one's 12, and they both have know people who are transgender, you know.
Really?
So this is a thing for younger people, but you know, there's always going to be an alternative group of people who like different things. I mean, don't you think that maybe this alternative group is turning away from technology? There's a bunch of young people who are going to flip phones now and want to play records, and are going back to the past that was before they were born. So that could be another alternative.
They're just realizing how cool we were back in the 70s.
And I think it's just it's overwhelming to be a kid these days. There's just too much going on. It's overwhelming. But I mean, I don't know. Do you see a radical twist for men wanting to feminize themselves?
depends what you mean by radical. I mean, when I think of radical, I think of ideas, but some people think, are a large number of people enough? Is there enough of a movement here to call it a movement?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there was a thing just today in the news about how many actual transgender youth are there in America. And they went through insurance company records. Who's asking for treatment?
Yeah.
3,200.
Out of all of the
Out of 335 million people.
So methinks you're making too much of, not you, but you know.
But then there's the people who just say they're transgender but never apply for their insurance company.
Yeah.
Which is what the mystery guest experiences.
Oh, with the kids at school.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's why the thing about, the movement, it's a fashionable movement.
It's fashionable, and I can see that it is it's a fashionable way to be both. Gives you
kids that
so
want to
much
fit
more
in somewhere in a group.
options. Yeah, and I mean I can see it with my grandkids, not with them particularly in particular, but like I said, with the people that they know in school, and I mean even when I went to the one show at school, or no, it was Morgan's graduation. There was a transgender kid collecting the tickets at the table, but.
Now, what's interesting, though, is this concept of gender and how it is embedded in the minds of a lot of people.
Yeah.
And this came out this week because Brittany Griner had a press conference.
Oh, yeah.
So Brittany, and did you see it?
No, I didn't see it.
How about you? Do you watch the news, Greg? Did you see the
No,
Brittany?
I didn't see it.
Wow, what an eye-opener. Do you ever hear her
What'd she
talk?
say?
No, I haven't.
You've got to hear Brittany Griner's voice because it freaked out men across America.
Well,
I guess her voice
and
is
how
deep.
about Lauren Bacall had a very deep voice, and she was not transgender.
Well, and neither is Brittany Griner.
Yeah.